Well, we're back after that Uju break, and this is the newspaper reviews or headline reviews, and we're starting with the Punch. The Punch newspaper leads with this story: Police vow crackdown as Kano APC and NPP supporters set for protest. The let us say troublemakers, unauthorized gathering organizers will be arrested and prosecuted. That's the Commissioner of Police, not typical. Military, NSDC, that's what we call them now, civil defense. Yeah, the other security outfits on red alert. The personnel deployed in hotspots. Um, good morning, bosses. Joining us now. Good morning, Boston. Boston Shifowara
Morning,
is
sir.
with us.
Morning,
Good.
everyone.
It's ready in his sporting wears, trying to bamboozle us. I hope you will not lose today. I hope all your praise and arrogance will come down a little peck, you know. But this kind of issue is it not is it not right in law that people have the right to organize to protest? I mean, beyond going violent and all that. Why are we still? Why are police commissioners especially always threatening people that want to protest or organize protest?
well, sir. In all fairness, I think it is necessary to put in place every form of security apparatus and defense in Kano. One, we know about the volatility of people in Kano. I mean, they have a history of riots and violence at the slightest, spark. That's one. And then the way this thing has panned out, um, it didn't go too well, particularly on the issue of how the Court of Appeal gave a particular judgment, and then how the CT was saying something almost diametrically opposite what what the oral or the verbal judgment given by the justices. And then you can recall that the election was fully contested.
Yeah,
So the place was ruled by the former Ganduje, APC,
yeah.
and then Kwakwansi movement took over, with their candidate. So there's been a whole lot of tension in the air. And this is not a time you allow for people to gather in the name of protest. If sincerely they want to take the security of people seriously, um, they should do everything to make sure that people don't protest because it will turn violent. It will turn violent. It's no brainer. That's very, very straightforward, and it's a given. So at this level, I think what they will do to keep the people at bay until the Supreme Court comes up with a definite verdict in that place. Even at that, there will still be reaction from different quarters. So I think it's just right to put in place all the necessary security um, measures to make sure that Kanu doesn't go up in flames. That's it.
Well, that's a lawyer telling us that you have to look at the circumstances. Kano is volatile, so any small spark can ignite uh, an inferno that will consume a lot of lives. So we need to be circumspect. I consider that. I consider that. But I still insist people have right to protest. Perhaps not in Kano and possibly Lagos, Abi, because of what we went through in Hamza. Nobody wants any protest in Lagos that will snowball into some kind of. Okay, given. The next newspaper is The Nation. I'm taking big chunks today. Uh, as you, as the boys say, no lele today this morning. Um, the nation leads with Rivers crisis. Wike hits Fubara, accuses governor of setting assembly on fire, says he introduced ethnicity into state politics. I am full-blooded Ijo son, governor declares. Alex, this your wiki. Is this not something like pot calling kettle black or vice versa?
Yeah, since he left office, there have been issues about him still trying to maintain control of what goes on in Rivers State. And a lot of people see that as totally unnecessary. He had a free hand when he was governor. And why doesn't he allow the young man that he selected? After all, he selected the man and facilitated him being chosen. Why doesn't he allow him to run the state without interference? That's the main contention. Um, Him blaming the governor for setting the assembly on fire, for me, it's the wrong thing to do, but it's neither here nor there, because if there were no contentions in the first place, we wouldn't be going through that crisis in Rivers State. So in the final analysis, it's a struggle for the control of the state. And there are a lot of resources there. I often comment on Rivers and I say people who become governor in Rivers have the tendency to misbehave. If you trace it back to right before Amechi, the governor before Amechi, was known to go around, spend money. I actually spotted him in Ghana one day in a hotel in a meeting with President John Kufuor way back in the day. I mean, he was actually giving money to them in Ghana. That's how rich Rivers is. Amechi also took over. We saw what happened. And with Wike, I mean, it was outrageous. So I think he doesn't want to leave Rivers. He still wants to maintain control of that place. And the current governor will use any tool at his disposal to try and win control of the state. So normally, when we're challenged, we resort to our base, and he's claiming he's an Ijaw man. So, I mean, that's expected. That's the way I see the situation in Rivers.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you, the Rivers correspondent. Thank you. This other one should be interested. Should be. I mean, it sounds like a good news for people of Ondo State. It says Tinubu resolves Akeredolu Ayedatiwa crisis. That's having one. I mean, parties agreed to uphold peace, maintain status quo. I don't trust that resolution. But what is it really? What is wrong with someone that is ailing to cede power to his deputy? And if you are so unavailable over a year now, why don't you go and rest and leave the space? I mean, it's not as if Ondo is like Rivers, for instance, where money is being thrown everywhere from here to Ghana, back, and all that. So why don't you just cede power to him and go take care of your life? Because if he dies now, life goes on. These same people that have been supporting you give oratory at your this thing, you know. Yes, but see,
Unfortunately, you're fine. Yeah, if you look at the three headlines we have, that it's all about power tussle. We've talked about Kano, we've talked about Rivers, and this is also Ondo. But the case of Ondo is quite amazing. And though I'm not privy to a particular news that's in circulation that when President Yaradua was sick, that Governor Akeredolu back in the day actually confronted him and told him to hand over. I can't verify that, but be that may,
So that's
the man is
like karma.
literally, yes. You know, so, and his health is highly impaired. We saw how
Yeah.
everything panned out. And then this issue of deputy, I think we need to come out strong on it. A deputy is supposed to take over in this kind of circumstance. But I realized that over time, people actually, the deputy is just it's not even a spare tire, or is a tire that they don't feel should fit in whenever something happens to the main person. We've seen this play out over time. We saw it with Goodluck and Yaradua. We saw Suntai back in the day, same thing. And now it's coming. So it's not a function of ethnicity now. I think it's a function of who we are. We've seen it happen in the north. We've seen it happen in the east. We've seen it happen now in the west. People just want to cling to power. They don't want to follow the law. They don't want to relinquish power, even in the face of failing health or incapacity. And it is sad. It is an awful development. And I don't know who or what is going to help us, but it's a very very sad development and a wrong thing, because people are seeing this thing play out. And I can assure you the average person is not particularly excited about what's going on in Ondo. But since the president has intervened, well, and I think if you look at the interpretation of the name of the deputy, I think his name has something to do with what I think his name has something to do with what he's playing now. It was like when Femi said the last father won in Lagos. You know, the name played a major role. So maybe it's the same thing playing out
Okay.
here. I hate to dictate, right?
I hear that too.
You
Well,
know,
you have the point there.
Ondo is my state, and there are a lot of issues going on
Oh,
there.
Yeah.
The governor's wife is known to be very powerful in the state. So is his first son. There were stories emanating that if you want to get anything done in State House, you best run it through his wife or his son, that they're well connected and that they are actually in charge of a lot of activity there. So what has been happening basically is the forces on the side of the governor don't want the people who work with the deputy governor to come in and control things. Because you see, if the deputy governor eventually takes over, he would want to bring in his own people, try to ensure that he stabilizes so that possibly in the next election, he will emerge candidate. So all those issues are in play here, and both of the groups are fighting against each other, like Bosso said, for power. It's all a power tussle. I don't believe that a word from the president will resolve that issue. That's my personal opinion.
And it is how will I call it? It's equivalent to the truth because as Ondo people and Kitiati, the general idea is that they are very stubborn. So one Ondo man to another. You can imagine the stubbornness raised to power two. What they call it, pro max stubbornness. Okay, I wish the people of Ondo State peace in the political space. I had to do a quick check to check on these papers today. Most of them are carrying politics. I'm not sure I'm on Saturday.
On a Saturday, politics.
On a
That's
Saturday.
serious.
The next one, Vanguard leads with another. It says INEC should stop dancing naked in the market. Appeal court. And they added this short quote. INEC should be reminded of its role in an election to be an unbiased umpire between parties. It should stop behaving irresponsibly. Then they had Sachs Bauchi speaker. That's a very strong condemnation from the appeal court that INEC should stop dancing naked in in the market. They can wear clothes or put on pants and all that, but don't do naked and
And that brings us to the
the
question. Sorry, Boston, before you weigh in, hasn't the judiciary become more political than we should be comfortable with? That's a serious
mm,
question. You look at the head of the body of benchers, she's the wife of a former governor of Rivers State. She's involved in selecting justices and making political statements at the same time. Don't you see issues around that, Bosun? Just to add to what the appeal court said.
Well, the fact is, the court hasn't become political, and the court has not become a political tool, particularly in the hands of politicians. That's not the case. There are one or two instances where you find that things look in that direction, but that's particularly what's happening. But it's unfortunate that where you have maybe two or three instances out of 100, people tend to magnify that too and use that to describe the rest of the folk. So that's basically what's panning out. And I'm not going to shy away from the fact that some judicial officers haven't performed optimally as far as their task is concerned, particularly on this election petition. But that is not enough to describe the entire judiciary. And as for Mrs. Odili, I know you referred to, she occupies a particular position, and when asked certain things, she needs to respond. And I think the woman has done fantastically well in her own space. And but sometimes some of those things are sort of varied interpretations by people, and when interest at play, definitely you will hear all kinds of how you can actually mean something else. I normally say this: if your wife checks your phone and sees a woman send "How are you" to you, that "How are you" may actually look like "I love you" in her face. So that's how that's how politicians actually interpret anything that comes from the judicial officers or judiciary. So that's basically what's happening. But I think the judiciary is overwhelmed, and I think there's a need for reform. We have gotten to the precipice, and at this level, I think we all need to come together, everybody, and put in place some reforms. I saw something read by Muir, and which is quite profound. He said that it's time the judiciary sits and find a uniform method of determining cases, particularly electoral cases. Because if you look at it, you find a judgment based on a particular determination taken on a particular principle in point A. The next state, you find that the same principle is used and used to determine something in another direction. There
Yeah.
is no uniformity, as it were. And one of the principles or cardinal principles of law is that you stay with the decision. It's called stare decisis. So, particularly if Supreme Court decided something, the lower court cannot go outside that decision. But we've seen all decisions flying in the air, and particularly if you look at what happened in Kano. I was with some legal minds yesterday, and we did a whole lot of analysis. And one of the things I pointed out was that, well, until Supreme Court comes out, the fact is some people were saying typographical error, clerical error. I say a clerical error is different. What happened is not clerical error. Something was decided verbally, just the CTC speaking in the opposite direction. That's no clerical error, point
mm,
blank error, which can only
mm,
be decided by the court that is higher than where the decision was. Because if you see somebody didn't win and they should go back and, that the other person won, and then the CTC now says he won, in fact, the lawyer should pay cost. That's no clerical error. That is definite. So they have to decide what kind of error it is. But from my own understanding of English, is not clerical error. That is
That's
problem error,
that's mystical
which is
error.
at variance with what was pronounced.
That's a mystical error from there. Um, thank you.
Well,
Thank you,
mental.
Prof.
Yes, sir.
Okay, we'll take the last one on Saturday's Sun, and as usual, it is also political. The lead story says, "Face off with Kubara. Wike opens up. Rivers governor moved against me after 3 months in office." Okay, let's go. Let's go and check your where you moved against them. Then the second line says, "Why I won't run against Tinubu in 2027." It's still about this Wike opening up or busting out, and so all those visits to Asoro to for peace and all that, just drama. Well, uh, let's see one or two more from Sun. It looks actually different from others. It said, how Ganduje recruited 13-year-old JSS students into service. That means civil service. That's
What kind of
accusation by Kano,
service?
Kano government. It's, um, when
Oh
it gets to this
goodness.
point, it's going to be rough fights. They will be throwing all kinds of things on each other. I mean, towards each other. So it's about this Guba debate. Um, like Boston was there, the mystical error between what was verbalized and what was notarized. God help us in Kano. Lastly, Chekwas, Okorie, Totinubu, go after those who looted treasury under Buhari. Hmm.
That's
Says go after
important.
them.
That's important.
Go
You
after them.
know, we're talking about what the National Security Advisor said. And he said one of the statements he made is that they are putting back what was taken. Now, all we've heard is Emefiele and Bawa. They are the only people who have been detained or taken before courts over issues of financial crimes. But we all know that there are many more people in that administration who need to be probed and need to be tried. Anyway, we're going to go into that a bit later, I believe.
Yes, I would. Thank you for remembering, reminding yourself about that. We are going to take a short break.